Welcome back to another episode of Selling Success. Becky Skeba-Mancini here, and I have a really good friend who I'm super excited to introduce you guys. His name is Cliff. Cliff, please tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Okay, thanks, Becky. So happy to be here with you today. My name is Cliff Bernstein. I am with Freeway Mortgage in Boca Raton, and I specialize in residential financing.
Welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me.
I have a ton of questions for you, and I'm just going to dive in because I know our listeners are telling me they don't want to hear the mishmash. They just want to get right into everything. So I know there's a new program called Hometown Heroes. Those of you that are not familiar with Hometown Heroes, I'm going to allow Cliff to enlighten all of us and give us everything. And I'm going to ask every question known to man to him about this program. So please tell us about this program.
Okay, so this is not a new program. It has been revised, and they rolled it out July 3rd. So just a little bit of history. The prior program was basically designed for our heroes. Active military, veterans, law enforcement, teachers, first responders, etc. That was a very, very successful program. And it is over. It ended. The money actually ran out. There was no more money. But
there was no more funding available for the first go around.
No more funding. That was over. So a few months ago, the Florida Housing came up with an extra $100 million, and we revised a new and improved Hometown Heroes program. What we have done is we've removed the occupational requirement. So there's no occupational requirement. The only requirement, well, a few different requirements. Most importantly, you must be a first-time home buyer, which is very exciting. And a first-time home buyer is an individual who has not been on the deed to real property in the last 3 years.
So what if they owned a property? So I know a couple of people that were divorced a few years ago, myself including, that, have been renting the last few years and now they're diving back in. Would they be considered a first-time home buyer if they haven't owned anything in the last 3 years?
If you have not owned anything in the last 3 years, if you've not been on the deed of a real property in the last 3 years, you would be considered a first-time home buyer.
Excellent. That's great news.
So it's very excited. We all love our first-time home buyers. So it's a very exciting time for first-time home buyers. So what has changed? That was the major change. The occupational requirement is no longer there. But a few different requirements for that right of the Hometown Heroes program. One, very importantly, you must be employed by a Florida-based company. And let me talk about that. Let me explain. So for example, the company could be headquartered in a different state, but as long as they have a physical office in the state of Florida, you would qualify with this program. And you have to work a minimum of 35 hours a week.
Okay, those are good stipulations. So it has to have a physical location in Florida. So a lot of people that have transported here from, say, out of New York, California, or New Jersey, wherever they may be, and they transplanted to Florida 3 years ago, if their office, their main headquarters is still in New York or New Jersey, and they're working here out of their home office, would that be considered a Florida office if they have their home office, or no, does it have to be a licensed office with their company?
It's an excellent question, and it comes up a lot. And the answer is no. So if you're a remote worker and you do not have a physical office in the state of Florida, although you work out of your home and you live in the state of Florida, unfortunately, you would not qualify for the Hometown Heroes program.
Okay.
But a lot of my clients do work remote, but they actually do have a physical office in the state of Florida. They just work remotely. That would be okay.
Okay. What are the other stipulations with this program for the Hometown Heroes?
Okay, important to know, you must have 35 hours a week.
Okay.
Full-time employee, 35 hours a week. And that's important because I work with a lot of travel nurses, as an example.
Okay.
And a lot of travel nurses put in about 32 hours a week.
That's it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Unfortunately, they would not qualify under this program because of the lack of 35 hours a week. Other qualifications, debt to income ratio cannot exceed 50%. A lot of times I'll get a DU approval for 55, 56, 57%, but this program does not allow us to exceed 50% debt to income ratio. Another major guideline, credit score. 640 is the minimum credit score.
Okay. So 640, they have to have a minimum credit score of 640. What if they're buying it with their spouse and their spouse says not? I'm just throwing it out there because I know that we see this all the time.
Right.
Say the husband is a firefighter and the wife is, say, a stay-at-home mom. Her credit score's 550 and his is like 710. Would they qualify?
Correct. Well, no, because anybody who's on the loan, we're going to use the middle score of the lower of the two. So with the 510 middle score, that's going to knock them out of the box. But in a situation like that, if she's a stay-at-home mom, we would probably leave her off. We would leave her off the note. She will have to join on the mortgage, which is the collateral, and she would be on the deed. But we would not have to put her on the note.
So there's ways of going around it.
Right. Yes.
Do both buyers have to have a Florida job?
If we're going to use both borrowers to qualify, they would both have to meet those requirements of working in Florida with a physical office in the state of Florida.
The both of them?
Yes.
Okay, so then what does this program offer for first-time home buyers?
Okay, so this is another change from the old prior Hometown Heroes. We've increased our grant money. It's 5% of the loan amount up to $35,000 with a minimum of $10,000 as a grant. The old program was 5% up to $25,000 with a minimum of $7,500 as grant money. So you can see we've increased it up to $35,000,
which is great.
It's wonderful. I'll just give an example. If somebody is borrowing $700,000 as a first-time home buyer, that's a $35,000 grant, 5% of the $700,000. And a lot of your listeners may not know, but first-time home buyers will qualify with as low as 3% down on conventional financing.
So will this be a conventional loan?
This is a conventional loan. We also do it for FHA and VA.
So this is just like a grant money to go towards your loan. It can either be FHA or conventional loan. Yes. So I'll continue with that example of the $700,000. Yes.
For a first-time home buyer. The minimum requirement is 3% as a first-time home buyer. That's your minimum requirement for a down payment. So 3% of $700,000 would be $21,000. With this grant money, we're giving you $35,000. You could use the $35,000, $21,000 can go towards the down payment to satisfy that requirement. You have $14,000 left over, and you could use that for closing costs. So basically, with this program, with this grant, it will allow a first-time home buyer to purchase a home with literally no money out of pocket.
So how would that work exactly? Say I'm writing up a contract for a client. You know, sellers don't like to see no money out of pocket. Right. So would you suggest that they put money down? Like I would say $5,000. Say we'll just use, you said $700,000, so we're going to use that. We're going to keep rolling with that. Right. Would you suggest they do like $5,000 as the initial deposit, $10,000 as the next deposit, and then they get that money back if they wind up doing an FHA loan?
Well, I mean, again, you're going to use that money as it's coming from them. So if you're going to write up a contract, it will be for 5% or 3%, however you want to structure it. You will include that down payment as it's their money.
Oh, you include it as it's their money.
100%.
When do they get that money? At time of closing?
Okay, we will fund that at the time of closing. It sits on title as a second loan. We structure it as a second mortgage behind the scenes. There's no payment. There's no payment due. There are 3 scenarios where that homeowner will have to pay that money back. 1, if they sell the property.
How long do they have to keep the property for?
Regardless of how long there's no restrictions on.
Well, I know back in the day they had like a first-time homeowners program that they would give somebody like $15,000 to purchase a property, but you had to keep the residence for 5 years without having to pay it back.
No, well, that's a different bond program, but under this program, there's no stipulation that you have to be in the property for a certain amount of time. It's just the payback if you do sell that, whether you sell that a week later, a year later, or 20 years later. Once you sell that property, that money is going to be due. You'll have to pay that back.
So you have to pay back the however much money you borrow.
Yes, the grant money gets paid back when you sell that property. That's the first scenario. Secondly, if you refinance. If you're going to refinance, you're going to have to pay that money back through the refinance or out of pocket. Or third, if you decide a year, 2, 3 years later to turn that property into an investment property, it will become due and you will have to pay that back.
Okay, interesting. So it can't be an investment property. So you couldn't keep that property, rent it out, and then purchase another property. You would have to actually pay back the grant money of the up to $35,000. Correct,
or as much as you've taken. If you borrowed $200,000, 5% of that would be $10,000. Whether you use $5,000 of that for a down payment or $5,000 towards closing costs, you borrowed you have the grant of $10,000. You turn that in to an investment property, whether it's year 1, year 10, year 20, it's going to come due. You got to put that money back into the pool.
And can they pay it over time, or is it due in one lump sum?
It would be due in one lump sum.
Okay.
It would be due in one lump sum. There's also other things we need to know about this program. Income. There's income guidelines on this program. You cannot exceed $130,000 a year.
Wow.
On income.
You cannot exceed it.
You cannot exceed. If you're earning more than $130,000 a year, you're not going to qualify for this program. So in this case, too much is no good.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I had another question for you. My brain is like thinking of a million questions. What if the property values decrease and these people got these loans out and they go to sell their property? Are they still responsible for that loan, even though they haven't made a profit in their house? Where do you suggest they get that money from?
Well, this is something.
I'm saying hypothetically.
Right, of course. And it's a situation that we've seen before. We're not we don't know what the future is going to bring. I'm very bullish on the market. But yes, in that scenario, the money will have to be paid back. So it can prevent you from selling that property because the payoff is going to come in too high.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Wondering, what if the payoff comes in too high and they don't have enough profit? It will be an issue. In selling that property. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Are there any other programs out there that aren't so rigid or so tough for first-time home buyers?
There's other grants, there's other bond programs, like you mentioned, that will forgive you over a certain time if it's an unforgivable loan. But I've noticed on programs like that, interest rates are a lot higher for something like that.
Right.
But there are programs where these grants are forgivable. And then there's some grants that aren't forgivable, where you might get better terms.
But if they would have got this grant, say, 3 years ago, they would be in a much better spot. Even if they sold their property, they would make their money over and over again, and that $35,000 would have been nothing.
Well, if they purchased, in hindsight, if they had this 3 years ago, the property values have done well. But I really believe, I talk to a lot of my associates, and a lot of them don't love the program because they say, well, interest rates are high. It may prevent them from refinancing. Again, I happen to be bullish on the real estate market, on property values. I feel interest rates are high. I do feel when interest rates start coming down, in my opinion, sometime in 2024, I think by the end of 2024, we're going to be somewhere in the 4s.
Really? At the end of 2024, you think we're going to be in the 4%?
I think we're going to see a 4 handle somewhere. Might be the upper 4s, might be the mid 4s. It's taking a little longer for my...
Where are we at today?
If I had to tell you what the 30-year average for the 30-year fixed rate loan, right now we're about 6.9. So we're kind of hot. We're kind of on the high end, on the high range. But I think once rates come down, as you know, and not to get off the topic, but housing demand is all based on interest rates. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
When these rates come down, there's such pent up demand out there. I believe we may see another 2021, early 2022 type of frenzy in housing.
Well, yeah, because everyone's renting. So many people are renting and they're paying astronomical fees in rent right now. And listen, I do open houses. I just did an open house last weekend. I had no signs up, pouring down rain. I actually did it as a favor for another agent in my office. Pouring down rain. It was a gated community. There was no note outside the door. These people got in a 2-hour window with no advertising, 9 clients. So with nothing.
With nothing.
With nothing. How they got in, if they jumped over the gate, if they followed a car in, I don't know. But they had to like jump through hoops to come see this house. 9 people. I could only imagine what it would be like if it was like really advertised. Like I said, I just did it as like a favor. 9 in 2 hours.
I'm seeing that also. I'm sending out approvals, pre-approvals, loan approvals, and they're coming back and they're not getting the house because they're competing
against others. It's so crazy.
And you know, there's a new norm out there. I remember when rates were 3%, 4%, 2.5%,
right,
and we started going up, and it kind of paralyzed everyone. Everyone was paralyzed. But there's an anomaly going on now. Now we just discussed where the 30-year average fixed rate is, closer to 7%. Once that starts ticking down to 6% and 5.875, I can't tell you, my applications go up like 5-fold. It's the new norm. They're okay with 6%. They're not okay with 7%.
Right.
But it's the new norm. And once rates get down to 5.5 to 5 to 4.875, I mean, you'll be working 24/7 again.
I hope.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Like the interest rates people are so driven. And I almost feel like people are more driven when other people are driven. Like I have clients right now that had told me, like I would say 2 years ago when we were looking for properties, I don't want to compete against 50 other offers. I can't do this. Now instead of competing against 50 other offers, you're competing against 2 or 3. And now where are you? You're still comfortable renting because now you want to wait for the housing market to go down a little bit.
Right.
You know, I'm like, you're always waiting for something. And to me, I feel like so many people waste so much money on rent. I'm like, the amount of money that you have wasted on rent these last 2-3 years is incredible.
Because the media scares them.
100%.
And you know what it is? And I'm going to make my point on the Hometown Heroes refinance point that I was going to make. But just to discuss this for a moment, because I think it's very important, the housing market, I don't know what the exact number is, but if you look at the last 80 years, this is why we study history, so we know where we're going to go.
Right.
The last 80 years, the market's been down, I believe, 3 times.
In 80 years.
And maybe it's been even once. Maybe it's 70, 60 years. 3 times. But everyone's mind goes back to 2008.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what it's fresh in everyone's mind. But that was a different situation, a different time, a different issue. Lending standards were 100% different back then. And everyone now has equity. There is no supply out there. You see it.
There's zero supply.
There's no way housing's going down with no supply. It's basic economics. I learned that in 11th grade.
I know. There's zero. There's hardly any supply. And when supply goes up, it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
So how is a house going to go down if there's no supply based on supply and demand?
That's what's crazy right now is everyone saying like, well, I'm going to wait till the housing market crashes. I'm like, well, you're going to do another 2 years of renting. So now you've been renting, let's say 4 or 5 years. How much money have you flushed down that toilet for nothing?
For nothing.
For nothing. Not your bills, not nothing. And you just flushed all of that down for nothing.
And you're worried about interest rates, but you're renting. What are you paying on rent on an interest rate 10, 11% and building no equity?
And a lot of them are like, they're in like this, like I have a couple clients over on the beach that are in like a high-rise building And I'm like, do you understand how much money you guys are literally flushing down the toilet? Like, well, we're on the beach. I'm like, correct. But if you buy in the same exact building, you would be saving yourself an additional $300 a month just by not renting, by purchasing the exact same unit.
100%. And believe it or not, it doesn't matter if values go up or down. Every time you make that mortgage payment, you're building equity.
It's insane. I know.
And let's talk about the tax advantages.
Yes, talk about it.
I mean, there's no 100% of your mortgage interest is still tax deductible. I don't know about you, but I'm a W-2 individual.
I am too.
And they've taken away all my tax advantages that I'm allowed to take. Yeah. Housing is still one thing that's available for us. So, I mean, you're missing the boat. But to get back to my point on the Hometown Heroes, yes, you will have to pay that back when you refinance. But I believe when you're at that point, whether it's 1 year or 2 years or 3 years down the road, if rates are at a point where you're going to be refinancing, I believe housing values are going to be a lot higher, and you'll be able to absorb that to pay back that grant.
Which would be good, because then they can drop their payment by getting a lower interest rate on their mortgage.
Correct.
And then they can be done with the loan, not even have to worry about it anymore.
Exactly.
So
yes.
It's kept as a second mortgage on the property for when you sell it. So it's like it's due, but you don't pay a monthly payment. Could you pay a monthly payment on it?
No. I mean, you could start paying. You could pay it back if you'd like to, but there's no payment. There's no obligation to make a payment on that.
What if they pay the mortgage off?
Well, if you have no mortgage, you will have. If there's no lien on that mortgage, you will have to pay. You will have to also pay that grant back.
Okay, you still have to pay it back.
Yes.
I'm just trying to throw every option, every scenario at you.
Yes.
So regardless, you have to pay it back, whether it's 5, 10, 15, or 35,000.
Technically, if you decide just to make a loan and pay that mortgage, it will still sit as that lien. It's not going to be due. If you sell it, if it's not tied to the property, you will have to pay that off.
Okay.
But if you literally just say, hey, I'm going to just pay off my first mortgage, you don't have to pay off that second until you sell the property, refinance, or turn it into investment property.
Perfect. That's great to know.
Yes.
So what other advantages do you have with this first time for the Hometown Heroes?
Okay, so
for the first time home buyers.
Another for first time home, and let me clarify also with our active military, because this program was basically designed for our heroes, specifically active military. There's some more advantages to them. They do not have to be first-time home buyers.
So the active military does not have to be first-time
They do not have to be first-time home buyers. So that's important for our military to know that.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's very good. What about nurses, or is it only?
Only for active military.
Only active.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yes, that's good. I mean, again,
because they get stationed all over the place.
Right, and we just, it's a way of giving back.
That's good to know.
They give so much to us.
That's very good to know.
Yes.
And they have to be active military, working 35 hours a week.
That restriction, no, they don't have that. They're not going to have that restriction as active military. As long as they're active military,
then they're fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. That's good to know.
Yeah.
What other things would you like to tell us about the first time?
Okay, so everybody's on an even playing field in terms of rate. So on this rate, it's going to be a little bit of a discounted rate than the normal pricing that you might get from your local lender, myself, the big banks. It's all issued. The rate comes out. It's all issued by Florida Housing. So there's no shopping around. So the interest rates is going to be the same from lender to lender to lender. So work with the lender you want. You don't have to shop around. It's going to be the same rate.
What about the closing costs? Is there additional closing costs with this since you're getting a second mortgage?
Great question. Closing costs are actually going to be less.
How is that?
We're going to waive some certain fees, some standard fees on these loans, processing fees, things like that. So you're going to have a little break on the closing costs, and you're going to have a little bit of a discounted rate. So the rates that I could provide on this program would be slightly lower than what I could provide without this program. So that's an advantage.
That's good.
Yes.
Why are they lower?
It's something the state, insisted on. First-time home buyers, let's give them a little break. Let's give it. Let's add a little extra advantage.
Do they still get the tax advantage even though they get this grant?
Yes, it's still a tax. You're not going to get a tax advantage on the grant because you're not paying any interest on that, but it's still have the same advantages.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about the program?
I mean, you had so many great questions. I'm pretty impressed. That was great.
I wanted to make sure I asked all the questions I could possibly ask. Like my brain's still thinking of one now. Like, what if a couple gets together, boyfriend and girlfriend, or fiancés, whatever? They're not married yet, but they decide to buy a property together. Can they still apply for the program? Say one owns a house, but he's going to keep the house, or she's going to keep the house, but they want to have a house together. Could they do something along those lines like that?
On the standard Hometown Heroes program, and again, excellent question. On the standard Hometown Heroes program, you could have, let's give an example as a spouse, and I'm working with a first-time home buyer with this exact situation. The wife owned a home prior to them getting married. Now they are married. The husband was not on the deed of that house.
Right.
He had no ownership interest. He wasn't on the note. He wasn't obligated. They now would like to buy a new home and utilize this program. The standard Hometown Heroes program, although the wife is not going to be a borrower. As long as she's not a borrower, the non-borrowing spouse, we're going to qualify with just him, but she could be on the deed, and they can qualify for this home with the first time with the Hometown Heroes, even though she is a homeowner, but he wasn't.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Because you see that a lot right now. Families are mingling together. They're getting together, and they want to purchase a property together instead of having two separate places.
Yes.
So in this loan, how high can you get a mortgage for with this one?
On this loan, we're going to underwrite basically off Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines. It's FHA guidelines and VA guidelines. So those loan amounts will prevail. So in conventional, 726 is the max, which might get a little difficult based on the income requirements of 130,000.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting.
It might be a little difficult to qualify for that. So
for $130,000, depending on debt to income ratio, how much would one apply for a mortgage?
Well, if we break that down on 130,000, what does that come out to? About 11,500 a month, roughly. So on a conventional loan, which you'd have to be at conventional, we could go up. We could push it up to a 49% debt ratio, although the program allows for 50%. A DU is not going to give you an approval at anything over 40, at 50%. Okay. You have to be below. So at 49%, let's just use 50% on 11.5. That comes out to about what? About $5,500 or $5,750 a month. Your total debts cannot exceed $5,750 a month. So if you have a car payment for $700, now you're down to a housing payment of $5,000. And you have some credit cards for $500. So your housing expense could go up to about $4,500. But just understand
But how much is that? How much would a property be?
For if you're borrowing on $726,000,
would it be $726,000? Could they apply for a property that's $726,000?
Yes, because that's you could borrow up to $726,000 on a conventional if you qualify.
Okay.
FHA is lower. We're in the fives, and
is it $500,000 for FHA? I don't even know right now.
The new FHA, you got the new FHA. The new FHA is $550,000. Okay. So we have that limit, which is lower, obviously, than the conventional, but in my opinion, it's going to be difficult on conventional financing to qualify. Strictly because of the income requirements, but it's possible. I mean, you could have debts up to about $5,500 to qualify for that loan, I figure.
I have another question for you.
Sure.
Say they get a conventional loan, they get the Hometown Heroes, they get $35,000 to put down on the property. Do they have to pay PMI insurance because they're not putting in or any money down or little money down? They're not physically putting down 20% of their own.
Yes. So it's going to be based on that 5%. So if you're putting down 5%, that's going to be from the grant. Your mortgage insurance is going to be based on you borrowing 95% of the value of the home.
So they'll still have PMI insurance on top of it.
They'll still have the PMI.
Okay.
FHA, you'll still have the PMI as well.
Right, FHA, yes, yeah.
Yes.
But I was wondering with the conventional loan if there was a way to getting around paying that PMI insurance a month.
There's a way to get around, because keep in mind, you don't have to, you could also utilize a lot of these first-time home buyers have funds that they've been saving up for that they would like to put down. Maybe they had 10% or 15%.
If they're not wasting their money away on rent.
Well, right, exactly. But for any individual that has some money saved, if you don't have the 20% for conventional financing to put down to avoid mortgage insurance, this grant might put you over the top. Maybe you had 15%, now you could borrow another 5%, and now you don't have the mortgage insurance situation.
So how much money do you have to put down without obtaining the mortgage insurance so they don't have to come up with that out of pocket? Because that can be an additional $200 a month or so.
Well, anytime you put down less than 20%, you're going to be obligated to pay mortgage insurance, which, if you look at it, it's not a bad situation. If one has good credit and is two borrowers, for example, on that loan, mortgage insurance if you're borrowing $500,000, mortgage insurance could be as low as $50 a month.
Wow, it's pretty low.
A lot don't realize how low it can be. So now you're saying to yourself, is it worth it for me to put down an extra 5%, which could be $25,000 or $30,000, to avoid that $50 a month that might only be on that loan for a year and a half if you're putting down 15% already?
Is there ways to getting the PMI off of the insurance, off of the mortgage?
Yes. I mean, the PMI is always based on the service provider. They're the ones that have their guidelines on how to remove it. But the rule of thumb, which everyone usually works on those guidelines, regardless, you're going to have that. You're going to have to be paying that mortgage insurance for a year. So, for example, if you purchase a house and you paid $500,000, but you had 15% down, and you feel, 6 months later, you feel, well, the property values have increased. I know I have over 20% equity. I could have this removed. You cannot start the removal process until you've been in that for a year. The only way you could remove it is if you physically, literally pay down the mortgage with funds. And
you have to pay down the mortgage how much?
Okay, so great question. It's not the 20%. You're going to have to pay it down. You're going to have to pay it down to 78% loan to value. So what's going to happen? After a year you feel, or whenever you feel you're at that equity, you're going to call the service provider. They're going to probably want to do an appraisal. And based on that appraisal, if you're at a 78% loan to value, that will be canceled. And there's also an automatic cancellation. As an example, if you purchase a home and you put down 5% on a loan, you'll see at closing there'll be in the closing documents a specific time when there's an automatic termination cancellation.
When you sign for the loan docs.
When you sign for the loan doc, it'll be stated in that paperwork. Something like 5%, if you basically do nothing, it might get removed in 5.5 or 6 years.
Do they automatically remove it, or do you have to request?
You're gonna wake up one time in 6 years from now, and you're gonna say, "Wow, I'm feeling a little wealthier today." There's an automatic termination date.
Really?
That's set.
No matter what.
No matter what. No matter what, it's automatic. They're going to base it based on your purchase price and the balance of your loan. Every time you make that mortgage payment, the balance goes down a little. All right, it's now 2028. We're going to terminate the mortgage insurance. But you don't have. I'm saying you don't have to wait 5-6 years.
Right, but you can also get it off by refinancing as well.
Or you could refinance and get it off. But if you want to just without refinancing, if you want to wait a year, you feel you have the values have increased, I made my mortgage payments, made a little more, I have the equity, you call up your service provider, they'll do it, they'll order an appraisal that you might have to pay for, but you'll remove the mortgage insurance.
Awesome, that's great news.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know everyone's like, oh, I don't want to pay the PMI insurance, but I'm like, well, it's not so bad. I got it on the property that I'm living on now about 11 years ago, I got an FHA loan on the property because I owned another house. Mm-hmm. But we had so much, we had very little mortgage on it, so we got an FHA loan on this property, and I put 3.5% down.
Well, that's FHA, which
FHA, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Right. Which used to be for the lifetime of the loan.
Right. It's the lifetime of the loan.
Well, no longer. Now it's 11. Now it's 11 years.
Oh.
If you're putting down 5% or more, they'll remove it. But just understand, on conventional mortgage insurance, private mortgage insurance, it's for the lender. It doesn't do you, the buyer, any good.
Right.
It's all for us, and it's all based on risk. So we talked about how low the insurance can be monthly, the monthly premium. We talked about $50 on a $500,000 loan. On a different situation, let's say somebody with 640 credit score, putting down 5% on a $500,000 loan, that could be $400 or $500 a month in mortgage insurance. That's a lot of money.
That's a ton of money.
That's a ton of money. So that's a big difference than 50. So if you have excellent credit, if you're responsible, especially if there's two people on the loan, don't be afraid of mortgage insurance. It could actually be your best friend. Keep the money in the bank. Have the money work for you. The $50, $60 a month will eventually be gone.
Is the FHA still doing lifetime of the loan?
Yes.
They are.
Yeah, yes.
Golly.
It's you'll get it removed after 11 years if you put down 5%.
If not, it's the remaining 30 years of PM.
But who's going to be in that loan?
Who knows? You would hope that they would refinance and get themselves. I had to refinance because I got a divorce.
Right.
But and I got a very low interest rate, thank God. But there's people that they're stuck because a couple of reasons. Say they bought like 3 or 4 years ago and they got an FHA loan, their interest rate's at like 875 or something, and they're stuck there and they're paying, let's say $200 a month in PMI insurance. They're not refinancing to get that off of there. They're just going to keep that PMI right where it is.
Well, we'll see when rates come down. Then they'll have to make the decision. Where's my monthly payment? But I don't. The 2021, the 2022 craze when interest rates were 2.5%, 3%. I'm more of a.
Do you think we'll ever get there again?
Not without quantitative easing. We're never going to be in the twos. Unless there's some type of government quantitating, or Federal Reserve doing quantitating, we're not getting down to the twos anymore.
So you hear that? All of you buyers, he does not think we're going to be in the 2%. I know everyone's like, I'm going to wait till it goes back down to 2%. I'm like, keep waiting. You're not going to wake up one day and it's going to be almost 7% down to 2%. That's not going to happen.
No, it's not happening. Again, unless there's something that's going on in the economy, the government does their quantitative easing, and we get down to the 3s and the 2s. That's not normal. That's like 2008, which wasn't normal. That's not normal.
Right.
If you look at the last 50 years for interest rates, we're not that far away. We're not that high. Yeah, we're high from where we've been, and it's a little bit of a shock where people need some time to reevaluate. But we're not that high based on history.
Right.
Now, once we get into the 4s, that's going to be a great opportunity.
Oh, huge for investors to scoop up some properties for low interest rates.
Right. I'm not a big refinance advocate. When we were 2.5%, 3%, a lot of my clients were already at 3.875, 3.5, 3 points. So to refinance from 3.5 to 2.5, okay, I'm going to save $100, $200, but I'm going to pay standard closing costs. I'm going to increase my term. That's not something I usually recommend. It's not something. I
agree.
But what I do like when I refinance, I always try to have a plan, and not only when you refinance, try to cut your term.
Right, from 30 to 15.
Yeah, go from 30 to 15, or if go from 30 to 25. Go from 30 to 20. Cut your rate, cut your term. Maybe with the lower rate, your payment might be the same, but now you just cut 9 years off, 10 years off, 15 years off.
Right.
You've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that to me makes sense when somebody goes ahead and does it that way. The other thing I was curious about is What is the difference between somebody paying at a 6% versus somebody paying at like a 4%? What is the, say we're going to still use the $700,000 home that we keep talking about.
Okay.
$700,000 at 6% versus $700,000 at 4%. What do you think the difference is?
I knew I should have brought my mortgage calculator. I always have that. Like a police officer not having his gun.
Yeah, I like to ask some crazy questions because this is what I get asked.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm not a lender.
Okay. It's a big difference. So 6.5% to 4% could be about a $550 difference in monthly payment, depending what you borrow. Now, if you're borrowing $100,000, it's probably not recommended. You're not going to save that much money. But again, who am I to say that? You know, $50 a month for somebody, you know, might be the difference of, you know, paying a bill or not,
right? Which
is fine. But with home prices now, if you're borrowing $500,000, you're cutting 2% off. I would, you know, I'm going to guess because I would say about $500 a month
for the 2%. Say a 2% commit. I can't even think 2% interest difference.
Yes, if you cut yourself down from a 6% down to 2%, down to 4%. Yes.
About $500 a month.
Right.
You would save.
And I tell my buyers now. I say, listen, I'm going to give you a call. This is not anything you're doing now. This is not your end all loan. And I usually don't say that, but I am planting the seed.
And I say the same thing. I don't say loan, but I'm like, this is not your end all house. You know, people are looking for that perfect house. I'm like, a lot of the first time homeowners, I'm like, this is a stepping stone. This is so you can get that house that you always imagined and dreamed of. This is just a stepping stone so you can get, you know, some cash underneath your belt so you can purchase that dream home one day. But I'm like, these are just stepping stones for the first time home buyers that think they're going to go from like a 2-bedroom condo renting to like a 5-bedroom, 5,000 square foot home. And then when they get the mortgage information, they're like, oh, I can only approve for $600,000. My dreams are crushed. I'm just going to go ahead and rent. And I'm like, big mistake.
Yes.
Huge mistake, especially like the millennials out there, like just, you know, they're big in the moving force right now, moving, spending their cash flow. But a lot of them are still like, haven't been married yet or have children yet. So they're trying to see the next step for them. And for them, it's like, for me, I'm like, buy that townhouse, buy that condo that you're spending money on rent with. Put that money away for yourself one day as opposed to renting. And then in the future, you will buy that dream house.
Exactly. Well, Fannie Mae knows how long you're going to be in your house.
Oh, yeah?
They have all the data. They've done their studies. Within their studies, the average person stays in that, well, I'm not going to say that house, but in that loan for about 6.8 years.
Wow.
They're in that loan. That's based on Fannie Mae. Now, whether they're refinancing or selling the home, it's 6.8 years. But I'm planting the seeds now. I'm giving them a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, it's all about affordability. Obviously, we've qualified you. You're closing on your beautiful new home. You can make that payment. You're comfortable. But I want to let you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, your payment's going to be this. But don't just jump at the first offer. And that's what I'm trying to let them know. Because what's going to happen, rates are going to start coming down. They're at 6.75% right now. Rates are going to come down to 5.75. They're going to get calls from everyone.
Of course.
People are buying their names.
This is what keeps us in the business.
And what are they going to do? Wow, all right, 5.75, I could save $200, $250. Let's do it. And then what's going to happen?
They got closing costs. But don't worry, they're going to put it on the back end of the mortgage. You're not even going to see it.
No, but what's going to happen? Then 3 months later, rates are now down 5.25, then 5, then 4.7. What, are you going to refinance again? So listen, just try to be smart, have some vision, have a goal. Where, you know, if I don't hit that goal, like anyone has a plan, have your plan now. Where am I going? I have to be disciplined. When am I going to refinance? What's going to be worth when's it going to be worth it for me?
Well, I think it's important that they talk to a lender. Like I just asked you, what's the difference between 6% and 4%?
Yeah.
They need to know that. So they can say, okay, I'm going to when the rates drop down to 4%, I'm not going to do it before then because then I can save $500 a month, which is a substantial amount of money. Right. You know, for somebody to save $500 a month.
Yes. Listen, in 2022 and 2021, I believe I was about 89% purchase business. In the lowest interest rate environment we've ever seen, I was still 89% purchase business because I didn't go after the refinance business. I just didn't. First of all, who has that much time? I mean, it was 24/7 dealing without purchase business. I'm not going to start marketing refis, but obviously you get the calls and you work with the clients. But to me, somebody was at 3.75 going down to 3% or at 4% going down to 3%, it's not something that excited me, and I didn't think it's something they should do either.
I agree.
So but now it's going to be a different scenario. We're going to see at least 2 points, maybe 2.5 for some people. It's going to be exciting times, and people are going to save some money, and that's going to probably, because the biggest problem we have now in our country is inflation.
Right.
So I'm kind of concerned 2-3 years from now, because we're trying to cut off spending to try to fight inflation. What's going to happen 2-3 years? Now everyone has an extra $500, $600, $700, $800 a month, or they're taking cash out, refinancing an equity.
Yeah.
You're going to start spending again, and then you're going to see the cycle again.
Right.
And so it's life is a cycle.
It is. It's a cycle.
Yeah, and I see it.
I see it too. I see it over and over again. Yeah. And it's like so crazy when you see everyone. If I put out there, I'm going to get 100 if I tell everybody, don't even come to my open house. I've already got like 5 offers on this property. I have 50 people that show up at that open house.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
If I'm like, I don't have any offers yet, it's been kind of slow and quiet, nobody comes.
No, yeah.
But if I'm like, tell people like, I already have multiple people interested in this property. I don't know if it's even going to last till the open house. I might even just cancel the open house. I get ridiculous amounts of showing. They want what they can't have. They want what they can't reach, what they can't. But then when we're now, and I'm like, well, now you're only going to go against like 3 or 4 or 5 offers, and we can negotiate right now. Right. They're like, well, nobody else wants it. Why do I want it?
Right.
They all know something that I don't know. I don't want to go buy that house and spend X amount of dollars. And I'm like, I'm such a negotiator. I love to negotiate. So I'm like, this is the best time for us to negotiate whatever you want. Tell me an area, what do you want, and let's figure it out.
What an opportunity.
Huge.
Now is the opportunity.
I can't promise that. And right now, but it's still crazy. It's still crazy for me.
Yes, because you're still competing.
They're still competing.
It's now, are you competing with 50 people or 2, 3, 4 people?
Right.
Right. That's the difference.
That's the difference.
Right.
It's not a feeding. And to be honest with you, that was my hardest year. Everyone was like, I'm making so much money in real estate. I'm like, really? I'm like, I feel like I'm competing against everybody and these new people that just got their license that don't even know what the heck they're doing. They're closing deals, putting up deals. My family, sisters, uncle, brothers, cousins, whatever is in real estate. So I'm going to go ahead and use them. They never even walked in the property. They're just going to go ahead and make a commission. And I'm like, wow, interesting. So I'm interested to see how many realtors are still going to be in this business by next year.
I can't tell you how.
Or lenders for that nature too. How many new lenders have you seen hit the market?
Right, which I like to see them leaving the business.
Me too.
The trend. It became so much more difficult. The business in 2021, 22.
Yes.
The business was great, but because we weren't working with professionals,
it was so much harder. Business was great, but it was that much harder, that much more difficult. And I'm sitting there trying to go over like an inspection report with somebody or a closing document, and they're like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." I'm like, God.
It got to a point where I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this about 25 years, and if I get slow, I get antsy.
Me too.
I get kind of nervous. I'm like, well, what's going on? It's just natural for me.
Yeah, me too.
But after 2022, I would say the halfway point in 2022, it started, maybe September of 2022, it started slowing down. I took a breather. I'm like, I was thrilled. I'm like, I enjoyed this little downtown.
I get antsy. I'm like, I gotta go out there. I gotta do this. Gotta do that.
Right.
Like my brain starts going.
Right. But it was just crazy. But
it's been a feeding frenzy.
But a lot, to your point, was we were working with a lot that were just newbies, new-time realtors, and it was easy business for them.
It was very easy. Now they're going to have to work for it. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen in a year from now. When their dues are due, right?
Okay, right.
They've got their MLS fees, which are, I think, like $2,700. They've got to renew their license. I'm interested to see how many of them are still going to be active in a year from now. because every 2 years we renew our license. So if they got their license last year, I'm very interested. I even seen physicians getting their real estate license. And they were going to go pursue a career in real estate. It was insane to me.
But you're not hearing from them now because they're doing something else. But now's the time. But which goes to show why the opportunity. Now's the opportunity to be real, to get into the business. Right. Build your business now in these bad times because when it turns, you're going to explode. Yeah, it's true. It's very true. Yes. Well, we're losing time today, but thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate the wealth of knowledge. Where can everyone reach you? You can reach me at 561-213-6852. My office is on Military in Boca Raton. I have people that are not in the state of Florida. Do you do loans out of the state of Florida? My company does loans in every state in the country. I basically just specialize in Florida, and that's all. That's the only business I do. Are you on social media? I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. And where can they find you? They can find me at Cliff Bernstein. There's not many. See, what's great about Cliff, we'll talk about that on another podcast. I don't know what's going through my parents' name, but what's being nice about a Clifford, I'm the only Clifford on Facebook. True. So just put in Cliff Bernstein. You're going to find me on Instagram and you can find him. We're friends on Facebook and Instagram. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you. I hope you guys have a successful week. Please listen to me where you stream all your podcasts. Take care. Bye-bye.